we never arrive. We're constantly works in progress, so it's important to enjoy the journey. For the book, every book that's sold, $1 for every book goes towards tuition for these girls to go to school. And that eagle, it keeps a lot of people in the same place, which is why 75% of businesses go out. It's because we listen to the advice of others who are not doing well. I was really proud because after 30 days of our book coming out, we created 22 scholarships.
Oh my gosh. That is so awesome. That is so awesome.
Hello and welcome to the Qualified Tutor Podcast, the podcast that brings you the latest in the world of tutoring, edtech and education, and hopefully inspires in you the big change that each and every one of us is capable of. Qualified Tutor is an industry-leading tutor training organisation and online tutoring community for thousands of tutors around the world. This podcast is the voice of this community, where we aim to hear from tutors, teachers, entrepreneurs, coaches, business experts, students, tutorpreneurs, and more from the world of tutoring about what inspires them every day, how they can help tutors like you, and what they've learnt about tutoring along the way. The question is, what will you learn today? Hi guys, it's me, Ludo Miller, your host of the Qualified Tutor Podcast. Now, after last week's episode with Michael Bungay-Stanier, which was hosted by, not me, but Jack Simmons, the lead facilitator here at Qualified Tutor, I know you must be thinking, when's Ludo coming back? When's Ludo coming back? I'm afraid this week's podcast will again be hosted not by me, but by someone else from within the QT team. In fact, Julia Silva, the founder of Qualified Tutor herself. This week's episode, we welcome on Susanne Mariga, who is the owner, chief accountant and chief profit advisor of Mariga CPA, which she founded back in 2008, not long after the birth of her daughter. Susanne is also the author of Profit First for Minority Business Enterprises, which is a real market-leading resource for minority business owners to take the next steps in their business growth. And of course, in and amongst all of this, Susanne makes time for her own podcast, the Profit Talk Podcast, which you can find in the show notes below. This exists to serve entrepreneurs who want to continue taking in business no matter what's going on around them. So for tutoring entrepreneurs like many of you listening, this book and Susanne's podcast will give you the confidence and tips to come out the other side of a lockdown and pandemic in a much stronger financial position than you would likely be able to achieve on your own. Now, Mariga CPA was also selected as the Profit First Firm of the Year by the Profit First Board, which is a huge achievement. So very, very well done, Susanne and your team. Now, without further ado, I will let Julia introduce today's conversation with Susanne.
Welcome to the Qualified Tutor Podcast. I'm so delighted that you've joined us because, to my mind, you're really taking the lead in showing small business leaders from minority backgrounds how to feel empowered, enabled, and give themselves permission to be successful as business leaders. It's a message that's very, very close to my heart. And you and I have been connecting on LinkedIn and through the writing community to really encourage and enable people to think about how to lead their businesses in a way that gives them satisfaction in their life so that they can really turn a project into a successful business. Is that a fair summation?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Great. So I'm really, really glad to welcome you here, Susanne, today. And I don't know if you've been warned, but we always have a warm-up question, and I have a feeling that it's going to be a really beautiful answer. So our first question for you is, please describe to us your why in writing your book, Profit First for Minority Business Enterprises, and explain to us what you're trying to teach and why.
Yeah, Julia, I am from the United States. I'm based in Houston, Texas. And, a lot of times, what happens in the minority communities is, and the United States has a very interesting history, as you guys are well aware. And, my background ethnically and racially, I am half Chinese and half Black. So, on my mom's family, I was the first to graduate from college. My grandfather was a sharecropper and his mother was one generation removed from slavery. And, and I remember when I graduated from college, my entire family came down to celebrate on my mom's side. They were like, oh my gosh, this is like the changing of like a legacy. This is like a pivot in our family for years. And what I realized was that, a lot of minorities, in this country, in the United States, a lot of us are Gen 1s to pivot our legacy. And, we don't come from legacies of a lot of money or maybe a successful entrepreneurship that's been passed down to us. And so there isn't that hand-me-down of information. And I thought to myself by writing this book that, we would pivot our communities by really creating that the leveling of the playing field by really creating an education platform that maybe we didn't inherit. But, as an accountant, because I've worked with so many businesses, I saw the good, I saw the bad, I saw the ugly, I saw what worked. And I said, let's put this in a book and let's teach people what I've learned so that they can quickly get to where they aspire to. And, it was interesting because I was writing the book. I said, I think we can go a little bit further in this book because, we're already going to be changing communities, right? We're going to be changing communities, eradicating those bad areas across America by creating jobs. But let's do something different. Let's take this a step further. And one of the things that we did in the book was we created a permanent endowment. So we partnered with a nonprofit, Hope Worldwide. And I said, let's send girls to school. Let's send girls to school, girls in Zimbabwe to school, because what happens in Zimbabwe, historically, the government has paid for college, but most kids don't get to go to college because they never are ever able to pay that tuition for that elementary school and that primary school. And so what if we created an endowment through the book, meaning that for the book, every book that's sold, $1 for every book goes towards tuition for these girls to go to school because, girls particularly are vulnerable because, in a culture that has polygamy, if a young girl doesn't get an education, really the only thing that she can look forward to is marriage. And so I figure it's hard to tell a doctor that she has to be the second wife. So let's go ahead and pivot this generation. I was really proud because after 30 days of our book coming out, we created 22 scholarships.
Oh my gosh. That is so awesome. That is so awesome. You are making change.
Thank you. And you guys are too, as tutors and educators.
We are. We absolutely are. And we are small business people. And our background is not in business and marketing. And we have no financial education. And we are just doing our best. But we don't pay ourselves first. And we don't value ourselves properly. And there's tons that we have to learn from you, Susanne. So to talk to us about the Profit First model, we have had Mike Michalowicz on the podcast twice before. And I will cross-reference that in the show notes, but please dig into the Profit First model and show us how it works.
Profit First is amazing. And it was like one of the biggest game changers in my business. And I'm an accountant, okay? So when I say it's a big game changer in my business, that's a big deal. And it's interesting because the whole concept of Profit First is based upon working with our natural biological and psychological makeup, meaning that we got to make it easy for ourselves in order to be successful because, too many small businesses are failing, right? I know in the US, we have a statistic that, at the end of 5 years, more than 75% of businesses are not going to be left standing that start today. And a lot of it is because of the miseducation that's going on. So maybe it's better that you don't have financial education because you can learn to do this the right way. In school, we're taught, there's this formula and it's generally accepted accounting principles. Revenue minus expenses equals profit. And the problem with that is when we teach our entrepreneurs revenue minus expenses equals profit, what we're teaching them is sell, sell, sell. It's a volume-based business. Get more kids through the door, get more customers, help more kids, drop your price if people are telling it too high, and then be responsible, right? Being a responsible citizen, pay your bills. And then naturally profit's going to be a byproduct. But what happens is these businesses follow that model. And what happens is they end up going out of business. And so what Profit First does is, you know what, we're going to focus on something called Parkinson's Law, which is your natural tendency. And what that means is, you know, what happens in our innate psychology is, you know, the more there is of something, the more we're going to use because we're efficient. We've been taught growing up as kids, you know, you get a plate of food, you clean your plate, you eat it all, don't waste that food, right? And so as human beings, if you give us a big plate, we're going to eat that big plate, right? We're going to eat a lot more food. Now, if we go to that order of dinner, right, we go to that meet the teacher event with a teeny weeny 6-inch plate, we're going to eat a lot less, right? Because our plate is smaller. And that's exactly how it is in business, right? When the economy is flowing and things are absolutely amazing, you know, my clients are asking me like, "Hey, Susanne, I need a tax write-off. Can I get that big old car, you know, that big old SUV so I can write that up?" Or, "Hey, Susanne, I need some training, right? I need some training. And there's this great class in Bora Bora, you know, it's a write-off, I heard. Can I take that?" Or, "Hey, Susanne, you know, I think about building a facility. I'm thinking about getting a space, right?" And when the economy is questionable, when they don't know where tomorrow's going to lead, right? They're making different decisions. They're asking me, "Susanne, what loyal employee can I keep so that, you know, I can keep running my business, but at the same time can be able to work on the cash flow that I have?" Or, you know, "Susanne, hey, what am I going to do? What do I need to cut? What expenses do I need to cut in order to make it?" Or even better yet, my favorite one lately is, "Hey, what government subsidies are out there? You know, like what tax credits, what free money can I get as a business owner?" And again, it's about what's out there, our situation. That's the same way it is in Profit First. And so what happens in Profit First is we teach our entrepreneurs, you know, we're going to create smaller plates. And we're going to create these smaller plates by taking our profit first. And we do this through the use of bank accounts. You know, you guys may have heard of Dave Ramsey's envelope system, and it's a lot like that. And what happens is, you know, we collect all of our money into one big bank account, right? All of our collections, all your tutoring income is going to go into this one revenue account. And then twice a month on the 10th and 25th, what's going to happen is we're going to allocate money to different bank accounts based upon their predetermined purpose. So the first thing I want you to do is pay your profit first. So you're going to literally allocate money from your income account straight into your profit account. So from day one, if I'm profit first, all of you guys are going to be profitable day one. Then you're going to allocate to owner's pay because, you know, you are your MVP. If you disappeared, you know, and didn't show up, you would have no business. But then, you know, taxes, they're part of life. You use the road, get over it. We're going to allocate for the tax man. Hopefully you don't use it all, but we're going to take a bank account. We're going to allocate a portion to taxes. And then whatever's left over is going to go to operating expenses. So when you check that bank account and somebody says, you know, "There's an amazing software available and I'm going to sell it to you," you know, you're going to look at that operating account and you're going to go, "That's all that I have. And do I really want to make this purchase right now?"
Yeah. I need this. You and I are going to have another meeting afterwards because you make it sound so intuitive. You know, you talk about plates, and my equivalent is handbags. The bigger the handbag, the more junk you carry, right?
Oh, yeah.
That idea of, you know, there's always a new software around the corner that's going to solve our problems. With me, I always think this new resource is going to be so useful. I'm going to use it with all my students. But it's a subscription and it goes on. And I rarely remember to cancel subscriptions. So if I could have that system of just looking in one specific envelope and seeing that envelope doesn't really warrant, the numbers in that envelope don't warrant that resource, you're going to cause me to be more creative, right? You're going to cause me to find my own solutions, to find free solutions. And that's never going to be a bad thing.
And now, just a short word from Richard Evans, the CEO and founder of The Profs, who are proudly sponsoring Tuesday at the Love Tutoring Festival, the business of tutoring.
Hey, it's Richard from The Profs. We're so excited to be partnered with Love Tutor Festival Jan 2022. Are you looking for the next step in your tutoring career? With hourly rates of £50 to £150 and all important daytime hours? Then check out The Profs and join our network.
cross-reference our conversation with this book that I'm reading at the moment, Rich Dad Poor Dad?
Absolutely. Oh, I
Are you
felt
a fan
honored,
of this book?
I love that book. I actually read it straight out of college. It was an amazing book.
I made my kids read it and my husband because I feel like nobody taught us this stuff. And the story in there that I wanted to refer to was the boys are working in a store for free and they're not being paid a salary. And so how do they make their money? They collect up the comic books at the end of the day. And the comic book owner says, you're only allowed to take these if you don't sell them. So what do? They start a library for comic books. And they charge the children for an hour of coming into their home and reading the library book. But they didn't sell the comics, so they're completely compliant. And I love the creativity that happens there, where instead of giving people, and just to point you back to tutors are doing something very brave. And we need all the infrastructure and all the creativity and all the permission that we can get to really be successful. So, Susanne, let me ask you about the psychology, because in your book, there are some beautiful stories about real women. Can you tell us about some of those women, please, and the journey that they went on?
Oh, yeah. It's interesting because everyone has a different journey with what they're going through. And there were so many women that I actually quote in my book, some of my favorite ones is, Dr. Avis D. Weaver. And one of the things that she talks about is, she when she started her business, she had to find her own unique spark, right? She had to find where there was an area in the market that really needed her gift and really how to provide that. And, her background, was more so in the media. And, a lot of times when people want to get into the media, right, they're just looking for a spot, any spot on television. She goes, you actually need to be in the right spot, right, in order to generate a return on investment for that media spot that you're getting. And so she realized that a lot of the agencies out there weren't putting people in the right spot. They were just getting them a spot on, CNN or, one of the channels, but it wasn't necessarily where their audience is. And so finding where there's a need, particularly to target your customer. And that's really important because in the tutoring industry, right, where is there a need? And where is that pinpoint between that need versus that affordability, right? Because I think that's one of the things that we struggle with in a hard industry is, we want to help everybody, right? And we're willing to, but unfortunately helping everybody for a fee, not everybody can pay your fee. And so, you have to realize that you have a business, right? You have a business, but at the same time, if you have a heart business, that has to be separate, right? That has to be completely separate. If you want to have a nonprofit, right? Run that like a nonprofit. But if you are looking to support yourself, you're going to have to go, where is there a need? And what do I need to earn from a pricing standpoint? A lot of times when we start a business, we look at it as a job, right? Like how much would I have made if I worked at such and such job, right? Maybe I would have made it like $20 an hour, $25 an hour, maybe pounds, right? From where you guys are at or euros. Maybe I would have made this amount per hour. And we mistakenly charge what we would have made that hour. We mark it up a little bit. But what we don't consider is, there's a time that we're not going to be working, right? Maybe we're going to want some vacation time. Maybe we want to, even in the school year, you got 3 months of vacation being a teacher, right? Maybe I want to build in a 4-week vacation. So I'm not going to be available 52 weeks in a year. Right. And so there's also going to be times where I'm not going to be able to teach too. Right. Because there's so many hours in a day. I have to write up what I'm doing. I have to market in order to continue to grow. If I'm scaling and I want to hire other tutors under me, right, I got to be able to have time to do that. And also you have to think about my future, right? My future is, if I'm going to hire tutors in the future, right? I can't just bill at that $20 an hour, right? I need to build in a multiple for that person working, their vacation time. And by the way, at some point, as you start to grow, if you want to attract A players, they're going to want benefits too, not just vacation. They're going to want health insurance, and you have to build all that into your price. So what I usually say is you want to get a 4X of what your market rate would have been as an employee.
That is ambitious, right? That's really ambitious. But when you set the bar so high for us, we step up and we create offers that are more valuable. So lots of tutors are moving into group tutoring at the moment. And I wonder whether that's a good solution and a good model. We also work in international tutoring. So we're working around different time zones so that we can really lean into our specialisms. It's a fascinating area, but I want to hear more about what makes us hesitate from valuing ourselves so highly, and how we can overcome the psychology of that.
There's in psychology, there's an ego, right? There's an ego in psychology. You guys remember Sigmund Freud from high school psychology, and you guys are, have gone through teacher training. So you probably had it even more recently than what I have. But, that ego is there to protect us, right? It's not all that bad, right? It's there to protect us. It keeps us in that tribe, as we call it. Yeah. And the thing about it is, when we try to deviate from the tribe, right, it judges us, right? It does everything possible to keep us in the same place that was safe. And a lot of times when it comes to charging prices, there's a couple of things that's going on with it. One is the ego saying, what are you to deserve that price? What are you, why are you asking this price? Well, what we don't realize is that my zone of genius is going to be different than Julia's zone of genius, right? And it's going to be different than your zone of genius. And just because it's coming easy for me doesn't mean that it's going to come easy for you or for Julia. I'm like, man, if I can get like tutors for my kids, you know what I mean? My child was asking me about this like math. I can't pronounce it. You know what I mean? Where lines don't ever touch, and I was like, go ask your dad. I don't know what that means. We don't do lines in accounting except through a ruler and making sure our numbers stay straight. and but just because it's your zone of genius doesn't mean that it's somebody else. And so you need to charge your worth, right? With that. So that's part of it. It's the ego saying, who are you to charge that? And also it can come from peers too. Like, if your peers are not charging enough, they're not scaling their businesses, and they're like, who are you to command that price? And so getting over that money shame and go, it's not about necessarily, trying to perceive yourself as more than what you deserve. It's literally about just running a successful business. And that ego, it keeps a lot of people in the same place, which is why 75% of businesses go out. It's because we listen to the advice of others who are not doing well. The other thing that happens is, just going back academically, right? That revenue minus expense equation, right? We focus on revenue, get as many volume as we can, right? And we take the wrong customer that ends up, we've all taken a customer that it actually costs more to take them on, where you're like literally texting the parents at the middle of the night going, it's really not an emergency, but it costs you more to service that client, right? Because it's not your zone of genius. Or maybe that was just not the right client for you in this particular case. So just, that's something else that happens too with that, is, when you're, again, working against your natural innate situation there is exactly what happens there. So it's a combination of academics and psychology that's involved with that. What I always tell people is start with what winning looks like. Start with what winning looks like and identify your why. Because when we start with the end in mind, meaning that when I look back in my business and I am going to retire, what are the things that I want to accomplish? What are the things I want to accomplish in terms of like my retirement, when I want to retire, how much money I need, how much do I need to live on each year? What do I need? And then algebraically going, this is the amount of revenue that I need to generate in order to really feel that I won at the end of the day. And that's important because, if you're going to be a one-to-one tutor and you're going to go to houses and you're never going to have employees, right? It's going to require a very different strategy than if you're going to have a franchise, you're going to have multi-locations, you're going to grow online and have like 10 students in this tutoring group, right? And you're going to have multiple of those group trainings. It's going to require a different strategy. So I would always say start with what winning looks like and then algebraically determine a strategy that you need to do in order to get there. So look at it, yes, you're in a heartfelt business, but also look at the mathematical side of it all too.
Well, I think what's nice about that heartfelt business is we know that there's more than one right way. And we have to do that introspection to say, what does success look like for me? Yeah, we're not treading a mainstream education path here. And therefore, some of us want to build big franchises, and some of us are happy with tutoring on the side and everything in between. And the permission to go ahead and design what your success looks like, and then work backwards and calculate what that would look like per month and per week, I think is really, really enabling. So let's sum up with two questions. The first one of this, and sometimes our listeners tell me that they listen to this podcast when they're walking the dog and they listen to it on 1.5. I have a feeling no one's going to listen to this on 1.5 because you and I have spoken extremely fast and covered tons of ground. So let's distill what we've just said and ask for one key takeaway for small business owners today.
So the key takeaway that I would have is, there's a couple of things really with it. The key takeaway would be, again, just starting with why. What does winning really look like for you? And then algebraically figuring it out. And then the other thing is, we never arrive. We're constantly works in progress, so it's important to enjoy the journey, but also, from a financial standpoint, because I am an accountant, have a relationship with your numbers, have a monthly relationship in your numbers. When your bookkeeper gets those books done, look at how you did this month, look at how you did last year, that same time, on that particular month and go, how did you do differently? If your revenue increased, how can I get more of that? How do I repeat? What was I doing differently this quarter or this month compared to last year at this time? And if I didn't have a great month, what was I doing last a year ago at that month? And how do I tweak that? How do I adjust that in order to get where I'm going? The other thing is when you're looking at those numbers, look at the return on investment, look at the ROI, look at what's really generating income. Is that software, like Julia said, that I subscribe to? I'm telling you that one of the most cleverest things that those software companies did was get you onto software as a service subscriptions, right? Because most of them are too busy to breathe and go back and cancel, or even realize we're still paying for that. But look at what the ROI is. Is that software subscription? Is it something that's covered in a free software, like Julia said, or is it a duplication of something I already have? Can I consolidate this to get more efficient with this? Or even like Julie said, with the group coaching that you guys are doing, the group tutoring, can I do one-to-many type of tutoring events in order to, again, generate greater margin? So again, focus on the ROI, focus on what does winning look like, and then you will determine your strategy to get there.
So that was fantastic ROI because you just gave us 3. So I will take those. Thank you so much. And, when we're talking about those subscriptions, I'm thinking to myself, I could have already bought those winter boots already if I canceled some subscriptions. So that's what I'm going to go and do straight after this session. And I just want to point our listeners to how to learn more about you, Susanne, about the work that you're doing, what's coming up next for you in your projects. And just tell us how to get closer and learn more from you.
Well, I definitely have the book, Profit First for Minority Business Enterprises. You can check that out at any bookstore, Amazon.
It's a great read.
Thank you. And that is a great way to do it. We do have the Profit First Masterclass where we teach you how to implement Profit First in your business. The next one's coming out on the 8th. It's free, 5 days. Learn how to implement Profit First in your business. Ask all your questions there. And that's another one of the events that we're hosting.
I'm coming to join you on that, Susanne. So anybody who joins will see us there, me there as well. There is so much to learn here, and we are novices at financial education. We really, really are. And exactly like you're saying, I'm so glad nobody taught me wrong. So now I can just come in and learn a system that's going to be helpful. When you arrived in this meeting, we had 2 of our community members who are leading our business hub. And one of them said that Profit First changed her life. She was running a catering company, and she was working from 5 a.m. until 1 a.m. and weeping as she was cooking until she realized that she was doing it wrong. And she read Profit First and she flipped her whole model, and it became profitable. So blessings to all of our business leaders who are doing their best and making a difference. And thank you to you for enabling us to learn some of the skills that we're really going to need to be successful. And I look forward to speaking with you again in the future. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Julia, for having me.
It's been really fun. Thanks so much.
Now, just before we close today, I wanted to let you guys know about a new feedback and commenting feature we have made available to everyone and anyone. SpeakPipe is a website that allows anyone to record a short audio message and send it in. We have created a special Qualified Tutor Podcast SpeakPipe page, which can be found at speakpipe.com/Qualified Tutor Podcast or in the show notes below. The aim of this is to allow you to leave feedback on any part of our show, and really whenever it pops into your head. There's no limit to how much feedback you can give. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Qualified Tutor Podcast. Whether you're a regular listener of this podcast or you've just stumbled across it, join the Qualified Tutor Podcast group within the Qualified Tutor community to stay up to date with our latest news, offers, workshops, and of course, simply to meet other tutors like you. Whatever your level as a tutor, our training courses will be the next step in your professional development. Visit qualifiedtutor.org/training to find out more about our CPD accredited and Ofqual recognised courses, the first of their kind in the tutoring industry. Your student deserves the best tutor possible. Make that happen today by joining Qualified Tutor